Well, God, we do want this and everything we do in your house to come from our hearts. We want you to know that we give you our passion and our compassion. That when we speak for you, when we sing for you, when we usher for you, when we do whatever it is, that it comes from our hearts. And that's where we come to let you know that. Be with us now as we look at your word. Give it meaning to us this day and allow us to live it for the rest of our lives. Through Jesus' name I pray. Amen. I don't know if that's a comment from the other pastor. I hope that's not one of my sermons. Hey, I need help. I have come to the conclusion that I have issues. That I might not be a stable person. I used to think that I had it going on, that I knew who I was, where I'd been, where I was going, what I planned to accomplish. Now I'm not so sure. In thinking about this message, I come to believe that I may be having an identity crisis. I took a day this week and I just listened to all the names I was called on that particular day. On the way out of the house, where the heck did they get all those pictures? I'm going to have to start pre-approving these things. On the way out of the house, my wife said the important things like, be careful, drive safely, and I love you, honey. Honey, it's not on my birth certificate. Of course, I guess compared to some of the other things she's called me, that was a pretty good day. And I deserved them all, I really admit it. As I stopped for coffee on the way to work that morning, I got called sir. Doesn't that make you feel old? When you're sir or madam? During the day, I saw friends who called me Mike. That one I could understand. That's on my birth certificate. I have been Mike since the day I was born, except when I was in trouble, then I was Michael. I get that every once in a while from the secretaries now. I won't tell them my middle name because then I have flashbacks from my childhood. I met some of you and you called me pastor. I talked to my son and daughter that day on the phone and they called me dad. You see why I'm starting to have an identity crisis here? That afternoon I was downtown in Guisards doing some business and I met a few people numerous people who called me chief. I gave that life up 16 years ago. I did meet some that told me it was nice to just see an old friend. On the way home, I had the occasion to pass somebody that, in my humble opinion, was driving rather slow. And I've come to be able to occasionally read lips. And I don't believe we're going to put that name up there. Because I'll guarantee you that that one's not on my birth certificate. And then to make matters worse, I didn't go home that night. I left here and I went to the River Valley High School because I had a granddaughter playing basketball, and as I walked in, this little person called me Grandpa. How can one person be all those things? Can you see where I might be confused a little bit? You'll be happy to know that I have since come to the realization that no matter how many names I have, I'm not related to Sybil. For you older folks, you'll know what I'm talking about. For you younger folks, ask them older folk. I do not have numerous personalities inside my body. There's only one person that each of those other people met that day. They just each knew me in different ways. But I'm still only one. Those of you that have children or grandchildren that have lived any part of life will understand that we are different people to different people. But we're still us. And I kind of look at that in that story of Moses, and that's the reason I picked that scripture this morning. Because I can see where Moses is having an identity crisis on behalf of God. Moses, who was floated down a river, picked up by Pharaoh's daughter, raised in the palace, until one day they brought him the blanket that he was wrapped in, at least according to Louis. I don't know if that's in the Bible. Hey, I like Charlton Heston. But anyhow, somehow he finds out they tell him he was Hebrew. Probably when they told him you can never be Pharaoh because you're not an Egyptian. And from that day, he started to spend some time with his folk. He wanted to know more about this Hebrew faith, this Hebrew people. And can you imagine, for somebody who just was introduced to the faith, how confusing that must have been? And then he goes out among the people and he starts hearing different names for God. He would have heard the name back then of, let me see here, I don't want to get any of them wrong. Jehovah Elohim, which means God the Creator. God who made everything. He would have heard about a God named Jehovah Jireh. The Lord, our provider, is how that one's translated, who sent the people to Egypt for food during the famine at the time of Jacob. He would have heard stories of El Shaddai, the God who is sufficient for the needs of his people, the God who watched over them even then when they were in slavery. He would have heard about the God El Olam, the everlasting Lord. I'm thinking I might have been a little confused about this God. I'm thinking, especially after I was raised as an Egyptian and had all the different gods that they had, that I might have got in my mind that maybe there was more than one Egyptian God. Now, I like to think that these are the things that ran through Moses' head when he was sitting on the side of the hill tending Jethro's sheep. I like to think maybe he was doing a little theology. Because that's what you guys do when you have a free moment, right? You sit out and, come on, just make me feel good. Nod your heads. Yeah, I got sheep up there going, no, not me. And then he sees the burning bush and he goes up and he finds out that this God, at least one of them, is in the bush. The God who says, take your shoes off, you're in my house now. You're on holy ground. And then God unloads on him what he plans on him doing, about how he's calling him to go save his people in Egypt from slavery. Go back to the place where you committed murder, and they probably want your head on a silver platter, and go tell Pharaoh, don't just stop at the front gate. Go on into the palace and tell him, let my people go. And after about 5 excuses, Moses' last question is this. Okay, who do I tell him sent me? Are you El Shaddai? Are you El Jireh? Are you... I don't want them to be confused like I am. Who's sending you? And we get that favorite line that we've quoted over and over. I am who I am sent you. Just tell them I am sent you. I am who I am is loosely translated from the Hebrew, I am God then, now, and later. I have always been God, and I will always be God. I'm only one God. Tell them I am sent you. No matter what I do, have some different personalities, but I'm only one God. And I see this theme, this principle carried over to His Son, Jesus Christ. As we look at the life of Jesus, we see the same question coming up. Who is He? He was the only Son of God, but He was many things to many people, was He not? He fulfilled various roles in the lives of people, and there was some question as to who people thought He was during the time He was here. And that's the setting for this morning's text. 3 short verses in the 9th chapter of Luke says this. One day Jesus left the crowds to pray alone. Only His disciples were with Him. And He asked them, "Who do people say I am?" Well, they replied, "Some say John the Baptist, some say Elijah, and others say you are one of the other ancient prophets risen from the dead." Then He asked them, "But who do you say that I am?" Peter replied, "You are the Messiah, sent from God." The first thing I want you to notice about that passage is there's a repeated theme in there, right? Jesus says, "Who do they say that I am? Who do you say I am?" I don't think that He spoke that "I am" in vain. I think He knew exactly what He was doing. In a way, He was proclaiming His divinity, was He not? I came from God, I am God, I am. But anyhow, by this time of this passage in Luke, Jesus has fulfilled many roles. So there is a question in the general population of who He is. Think of all the things, and just go back to that. If you just leaf through the first couple chapters of Luke, you'll see different things where His earthly ministry, He chose the 12 disciples, the ones that He was going to tutor and mentor, and were going to carry on the movement after He left. So He took on the role of teacher and leader. He healed various people of their diseases. He drove out demons. He preached to the masses and took the religious leaders of the time to task for what some of the things they were teaching and doing. He showed compassion to a widow and raised her son from the dead. In the middle of a violent storm, when the 12 disciples thought they were all going to drown and die, He stood in the bow of a boat and showed that He had even dominion over the waves and the wind. I'm thinking the disciples should have probably got it then. After seeing all that and then watching that, and before we get to this passage, right before this passage in that chapter is when He does the miracle of feeding all the people with 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish. He's been a healer, He's been a teacher, He's been a leader. But they need to figure out He's the Messiah, the Son of God. So He asked me, He says, "What are the people downtown talking about? When you bring me up down at Starbucks, who do they say that I am?" Because I know you church people, y'all gossip. That's Jesus talking, not me. Who do they say that I am? And they come up with all this stuff about, well, some of you think, even though you were alive when He died, some of you think you're John the Baptist. There are those that think you're Elijah. And this all ties into their belief because they were told that Elijah would come back to make the way for the Messiah. Matter of fact, later on, Jesus Himself tells His disciples, He said, Elijah was John the Baptist. That prophecy was fulfilled. But that's the mental sitting of all the people in the town and around that knew Jesus. They figured maybe He's Elijah. Maybe He's coming back to lay the way for the Messiah. And if he's not Elijah, we had some pretty good old prophets, some ancient guys like Isaiah and Jeremiah and Amos and Hosea. Maybe he's one of them. And Jesus listens to all that. I love you too. Jesus finally says, okay, you've seen everything I've done. You've been with me now for 50%. Who do you say that I am? And Peter, being the spokesman, Peter, who is chastised in the one gospel right after he answers this question, is where Jesus says, get behind me, Satan. Peter, who is known to stick his foot in his mouth occasionally, says, you are the Messiah sent from God. Peter got it. Now, I think the rest of them got it. But I think for you school teachers, you'll be able to understand this. And for those of you that have gone to school, that, usually in the class you've got that one kid that always has the right answer. So when the teacher asks, you don't stick your hand up. You let them give the answer, then the rest of you pile on. Yeah, that's what I was going to say. I think the other disciples got it. They just knew Peter would say it. And if he was wrong, then he'd get all the chastisement from Jesus instead of it. By this time in his ministry, after the thing with the boat, and the storm, and the feeding, and all that, I'd like to think that they got it. So Jesus has had many roles with many people. He was the Son of God, part of the Trinity. He was, and you notice even the kids knew that one. He was the son of Mary and Joseph. He was an earthly son. He was an earthly brother. We know that he had stepbrothers and sisters. And if he was a son to Mary and Joseph, I'm guessing he had grandparents. We know that now he's a heavenly brother to all of us that believe in him as the Messiah. We know that he was a healer. We know that he was a teacher. We know that he was a leader. You could even add names like rabble-rouser. Right? If you look at the Sermon on the Mount, which is the one we're looking at in the men's group right now, it was complete counterculture. He didn't come to tell you to do the status quo. He came to tell you to change things. He got a reputation from the religious folks on that one. He was a rabble-rouser, an upstart young preacher, didn't know what he was talking about. He was many things to many people. He was a friend, an earthly friend of people like Lazarus and Mary and Martha. We know that he was emotional in front of his disciples. He wept over Jerusalem because he knew some people were never going to get it. Now today we call him King of Kings and Lord of Lords. Who was Jesus? When I was researching the sermon, I actually looked it up. In the Bible, there are 603 names. 603 names for God and Jesus Christ. That's a lot of names. I would have an identity crisis with that many. And yet, the most important one is Savior, Messiah. The question Jesus asked his disciples 2,000 years ago, he's still asking us today. Who do you say that I am? Who do you say that I am? Because it's the answer to that question that determines whether you're a disciple or just part of the crowd. You have to decide who he is. You have to decide the answer to that question in your life. Who do you say I am? It's when your answer to this question with certainty. It's when you finally get to the point where you realize who He is on a personal level, that you can watch the kids sing, or you can sing along a song like Days of Elijah and know what they're talking about when they say, behold, He comes, riding on the clouds. Guess what, folks? That's the second coming they're singing about. You have to believe in the first one before you can celebrate the second one, don't you? Who do you say that He is? Can you sing that song with joy and celebration and certainty? And that's the simple question I have for you today. Who do you say He is? I know who I say He is. Who do you say He is? Where are you at on the spectrum? Does He hold some significance to your life, or is He just a character in this book we call the Bible? Good reading. Who do you say that He is? Do you know Him up close and personal, or do you know Him at a distance? You know, this coming Wednesday is Ash Wednesday. We start Lent. Yes, I know it's Valentine's Day. Take your loved one to supper before church. God loved you first. You should love Him first. If your wives get mad, blame it on me. But it's the beginning of Lent. It's the time in the church when we remember who He was and what He did. It's the time that leads us through who we are, and that's what we will discuss Wednesday night, because before you can decide who He is, you have to know who you are, don't you? I give you the answer, but then you wouldn't want to come on Wednesday. But then starting after that, we're going to explore this question for 6 weeks. Who do you say that I am? Through the book of John, Jesus says a lot of things, doesn't He? I am the gate. I am the good shepherd. I am the bread of life. I am the living water. And we will end on Easter morning when we celebrate I am the resurrection and the life. But I invite you through these next 6 weeks to think seriously about that question. You might even think you got it all figured out, but I got news for you. There's probably more to it than you've even discovered yet. I don't care if you're 93 or 95. You can still grow in your faith. Correct? So that's what I invite each and every one of you to do. It's my hope and my prayer that you'll find the answer in a relationship with Jesus Christ that you're searching for. Amen.